Hey there, I'm Allison, and today I'm telling y'all about this book I've been reading, Cooking for Geeks. If you saw my video last week, you know that I'm setting myself up for some goals in 2017, and one of those is to learn more Spanish and Chinese, and the other is to read books, and specifically to whittle down this. I do want to read all of these. I just haven't had the time. For the last several months, I hadn't been taking the time to read consistently every day and only read a couple books, so that will not be the story of 2017. My goal is to read one book a month, and 12 books in a year may not sound super impressive, but I have so much going on, and if I manage to read one book a month for the whole year, and I will be doing so much better than 2016 Allison did. Anyway, on to this month's book, which is Cooking for Geeks, Real Science, Great Hacks, and Good Food. I once got into an impassioned debate with my college roommate about whether baking was more of an art or a science. After reading this book, I finally have the satisfaction of knowing I was right. Baking is more of a science than really it is an art. So how do you like me now, Rachel? Well, probably the same, since we haven't talked in ages, so score one for me. I originally bought this for my husband some Christmases ago, and I finally took a turn at reading it through. It's got some inventive recipes and definitely some classics done right, but that isn't really where it really shines. These 7 chapters, they explain the chemistry and the chemical interactions involved in cooking meat and baking and sous vide. The first time I heard about sous vide was when I watched the epic rap battle between Gordon Ramsay and Julia Child, so it was a complete education for me about what that water bath type scenario does and how it cooks the meat differently, and I'm glad they spent the time they did on it. The last 2 chapters focus mostly on interesting hardware and molecular gastronomy that tends towards the flashy and can be fun for folks who like to work with chemicals and make food do different things that are surprising, and so that can be fun, but it's not really my bag. I was satiated by the beginning of this book, particularly this section on baking. I'm a huge baker. I love to bake, and so better understanding the chemical interactions and when browning occurs and why it occurs. I also got a good education on meat and why how it cooks differently, different cuts, and why they cook differently, and how the proteins denature. And it was fascinating stuff. I'm sure I'll be referencing it moving forward because I'm not going to remember all that. There are several Q&A type interviews with different chefs and food scientists in this book. Most of them are worth reading. A couple of them are pretty bland, but maybe that's just my personal taste. I'm sure others would find different ones interesting. It kind of depends on, what you're interested in. There's a lot for geeks of a broad spectrum here. This book really is aimed at getting geeks to engage and cook in the kitchen. But what it mostly drives home is that the idea that curiosity and the willingness to experiment and fail and try again, those are all, like science in other areas, those are all relevant to working in the kitchen and developing something that you really like to eat and to share with others. So I like that about the book, that it really promotes this sense of curiosity in the kitchen, that, recipes are good, but there's only so much of that you can rely on. Being able to modify recipes is a valuable skill. If you want to know more about how your food cooks and how you can better experiment in the kitchen, or just even have a more scientific or computer hacker, as they like to say in the book, hacks, if you want to have that perspective, it's probably a good read for you. I enjoyed it. So on to the next book. So that will be something I talk about in February, and see you next week for another vlog.